Here in this video I want to give you a really thorough understanding of how NEX has been integrated within Maya. There's quite a bit in NEX, and some things are quite obvious and some things are not, so I want to go over all of that. So it's going to be quite a bit, so I'm just going to jump right into it. The first thing I want to show you is the NEX status line button here, and this is essentially a toggle button that lets you toggle how you want NEX to be integrated within Maya. So by default, when you are in the select translation tools or any of the main tools within Maya and you go into component mode, it'll automatically put you into the next tool. So here this is the tool icon for NEX, and when you again go to component mode with this button enabled, it'll automatically put you in those tools. So if I turn that off, and again I'm going to come out of object mode or component mode and go to component mode, you'll see that now I'm back in just the regular tool, and it's not putting me into NEX. So we made it, or we try to design NEX so that it seamlessly integrates within Maya, and we didn't want to have to force you to actually set up separate hotkeys or any of those types of things, but we wanted you to be able to turn that level of integration or that seamless level of integration off depending on how you want it to work with NEX. So if you prefer to be very selective of how you're going to use NEX and just only want to use NEX for a couple features here and there and turn it off for everything else, then you can just pretty much just turn this off, stay in the same native Maya tools that you're already familiar with, and then only go to NEX when you need to. And so you can just go over here into the NEX panel and enable certain tools here, or find those same tools in the menu here, the drop-down menu, and just hide the NEX panel altogether. But that button there is very important because again it dictates how perhaps more than any other feature within NEX, how NEX is going to be integrated within Maya. So turning that on and off is going to be very important to understand. The next thing is, but having said that, I would say the vast majority of NEX users do not turn that off. I mean, obviously they're using NEX for a reason, and it's set up and designed intelligently enough to know when you're going to need it. And specifically, NEX is again a component at level modeling tool, so it's only going to be enabled really when you're editing components for now. And that checkbox is also replicated here or duplicated here in the options as well. So the next thing I want to show you is actually one further aspect to that, is that when you're in the next tool, it also adopts your hotkey. So here I'm pressing W, E, R, and it's switching from the different translation or transformation tools, and any of the tools that are mimicked in NEX that have a hotkey set up already in Maya are also going to be adopted in NEX as well. So you don't actually have to set up those hotkeys as well. Again, that can be enabled and disabled all within the options, and you can have that set up. And that's you don't have to worry about it overwriting your preferences or anything like that. It does it very intelligently, and if you ever have to uninstall NEX, it's not going to overwrite your hotkeys or any of that stuff either. So it's, like I said, very safe. The next thing I want to show you is the custom hotbox. So here when you install NEX, you'll also get some unique hotbox items. So normally you get some, you get the camera kind of switching tools within Maya. With NEX, you get some additional camera views and some other commands like the new camera, so that'll create a new camera from that perspective or from that view that you're currently in. The next thing I want to show you is actually we're talking about is the NEX panel. So here you can see that I can quickly tear it off and make it floating, and you can dock it to the left or dock it to the right. So the NEX panel is pretty much going to give you all the main tools, actually all the tools within NEX, and also options within those tools. So it's a very concise user interface. We don't necessarily have any commands in here. There are going to be some specific commands that are going to be in this list here, or in the drop-down menu, but for the most part, everything in the NEX panel is just tools and give you a heads-up display of what each tool is doing in each option for each of those tools. So we try to not throw everything in here, just only basically the tools and their options for those tools. There are going to be some unique commands that are going to be only in the menu here that you can, of course, set up hotkeys. So for example, let me show you a couple. One very useful one is for example, if I wanted to shrink wrap this plane onto this mesh, I can just go over here and I can say edit poly and say set the selected as the transform constraint, and you can see that I could have done that here in this panel here as well, but this is a quick way of doing it just for the selected object. Then here now I can just say shrink wrap that object to that transform constraint, and so that's a command that The shrink wrap one is actually not accessible through the panel here because really it's just a command and it's not really a tool. So there are other ones I could show you. Maybe, let's see, if I go over here and I extrude, and I'm going to go ahead and create an offset. Actually, you know what I'll do is, yeah, I'll do that again. And let's say I want to select all of these faces that are similar to the one like this one. When you're working with symmetrical meshes, it's sometimes very useful to basically be able to select things. Actually, it might make this a little bit more useful by creating a cylinder. And I'll say create, let's say, extrusion like this, and I'll turn off keep faces together. And I'll extrude again. And let's say I wanted to select all these top faces. Normally, you know, they're not part of an edge ring or loop or whatever, so it's going to be kind of one of those things where you have to go individually one by one. However, we do have a command for that, and it is in NEX, and it is called selection select similar. And you see, just by having one selection, it'll automatically know to select similar faces to that. And that's not just restricted to polygons either, so that's why it's not in the polygon submenu. It's actually select similar will apply to, you know, if you have a polygon mesh selected and you say select similar, it'll automatically select all the polygon meshes. Same with cameras or anything that are specific types of nodes, it'll automatically select those specific types of nodes. So we try to make that command pretty general purpose. If there's a command here that you want to set up a hotkey or you want to use quite often, of course you can do that within the NEX hotkey editor. So you go to the settings preferences hotkey, and there's going to be a category in here called NEX. And here is just the listing of all the different commands, and you can just set up a hotkey for that. Or you can actually control shift on that item, and it'll drop it to your shelf, which you can later drop to your next shelf, which is kind of hidden on the bottom of your next panel. So if you want to have commands here, you can definitely do that, but you're going to do that manually. So the next thing I want to show you, again, feel free to go through all the different menu panels here. They're all pretty simple and straightforward. And if there are things that are a little bit confusing, just feel free to consult the NEX help, which you can get through here as well. Besides that, there are some other hidden kind of gems. The next thing I want to show you is that when you're in the NEX tool, you can quickly switch to the Raycast selection tool just by holding the tab key. So now I can just left click drag, and it's going to automatically let me raycast my selection, and you'll notice that it just added to it. If I already have a selection and I want to add to it, again, I just hold the tab key and just go over any component that's not already selected and just kind of drag, and it's just going to add to it. If I want to remove from my selection, I move my cursor to an already existing selection and just kind of just drag on top of that, and you'll see that I can just remove that from that selection. So that's kind of you can of course turn on Raycast selection and just do that manually, but if you want to just quickly jump into it, like I like to personally have it set up so I can quickly make my selections using a marquee or by picking, with just by normally picking selections. But every once in a while I like to use a Raycast selection, and I don't want to have to switch a different modes. I just quickly jump to it by holding down the tab key, and when I let go of it, it puts me back into whatever tool I was already in. So that's the tab key. Another key right below that is the caps lock key, and when you have that on, it'll actually have this little heads up display on top of your viewport here to let you know you have caps lock key on. Maya by default uses hotkeys in a certain way. I think it's the ASCII code, so that basically if you have caps lock key on, it's going to recognize whatever key you press after that as the capital version of that or the uppercase version of that. So it's sometimes good to know when you have caps lock on and off, which you can do inadvertently. But with NEX, you have that heads up display to tell you. Besides that, there's of course the fully integrated loop and ring integration within NEX. If you double click on a mesh, you can get the full shell as well. So that's pretty detailed. I don't want to go over each one of those features. If you have let's go ahead and actually go on a simpler mesh here. I'll start with a cube here. If you have a edge selected, you can move your cursor, or I should say a border edge. You can use your cursor and hold down shift to extrude. So if you hold shift and you drag on the manipulator, you'll see that it extrudes. If you have an edge selected and you hold Control Shift and middle click drag, you can see it slides the component. So it's sliding the component along the actual adjacent edges. Let's see what else. If you hold Control and middle click drag, it'll move it along its normal. So Control Shift will slide, Control will move along normal. Shift will predictively move it along the axis that you're moving towards. So here you can see I can, it just, all these features are kind of to have less reliance on using the manipulator. So if I know I need to move this up or to the right over here, I can just hold Shift and middle click drag. And then if I want to go up, left or Shift, middle click drag. If I want to slide, Control Shift, middle click drag. And if there's nothing selected, I can just select the highlight and it'll automatically do it. And you'll notice that it's respecting whatever your last axis selection was. So if I want to do it in screen space, I can just do it that way too. So another thing worth knowing is if I have a sphere and I use my highlight, I can hold down or click the backspace key and it'll automatically delete components. So here I can either backspace or delete, and then I can also delete an edge ring, or actually edge loop, by holding Control backspace. So that's different than what you would normally get. If you just normally press backspace, it'll keep the actual vertices. So if I go back and hold Control Shift, you'll notice that it'll actually remove the vertices with it. So also, if you do that on faces, it'll actually select the border as well. So sometimes it's useful to have the faces deleted but keep that edge border, or automatically make that selection. That pretty much wraps it up. Again, there's a lot of different ways of NEX that's been integrated within Maya. You can pretty much turn on and off all those features by going to the NEX options and turning on which features you want on and off. But for the most part, they can be extremely useful.